Hi everyone, it's Sandra from Sandra Bianco Photography, and today I'm going to show you how I edited this apple orchard image using the Painterly 2 collection from Greater Than Gatsby. So the very first thing I'm going to do is start with the beginning brushes, which is basically a mini retouch set, which is very specific to this style of editing, which is why we included it in here. So the very first thing I'm going to go ahead and start with is the Painterly Perfect Smoother. And I'm just going to go ahead and reduce my brush down somewhere in maybe the 60s because I do want to give it a nice smooth finish. And I'm also going to paint some onto her arms and even soften up her neck a bit. And I'm going to be bringing some of that detail back towards the end of the image with Dodge and Burn. So I'm not too worried about over smoothing right this minute. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is go to my Painterly Skin Tone palette. And I'm going to go ahead and run Painterly Tone 3. And I'm going to go ahead and reduce my opacity to about 40%. And I'm going to go ahead and paint a bit of this onto her skin. So give it a little bit of warmth. And you can see that this arm is already warm. So I just painted a little bit onto this arm just to try to even that out a little. So you can see there if I click on and off. The next thing I'm going to do is go into Painterly Tone 7. And I'm going to go ahead and add a bit of this to her cheek. Not too worried about the other one because it's in the bushes basically. And I'm going to add a little bit to her lips. So you can see what that does. The next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and flatten that. I'm going to go into my Painterly Skin Shine. And I'm going to go ahead and use, let's try Milky Skin Shine. And that one's pretty. So it's just going to give her a little bit of glow. And I'm just sort of painting that everywhere onto the subject. And then I'll go ahead and reduce my opacity a bit. And a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and mask this off of her eyes. So I'm going to try to keep her lashes nice and dark and even her brows. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to do is go into our Painterly hair texture. And for this, I like to keep my brush at about 50%. So I'll just go ahead and change that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start painting this onto her hair. And you'll see it starts to really smooth things out and give it that nice, soft, glowy, smooth look. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is go into my Clean and Simple foundations. And I'm going to go ahead and use Tabula Rasa. And I'm going to go ahead and take that down. Just want to add a little bit. About 25% is good. So I'm just adding a little there so you can see that if I click on and off. And then the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to skip our artistic shifts. But if you haven't played with those yet, please do because they're amazing. And we're going to go into Arnolfini Marriage. And I'm going to reduce my opacity on this. Let's see, about there looks good. And I'm also going to click into my layer mask and I'm going to mask this off of my subject. Just like what it's doing to the background of the image. Let's go to 100%. So that's giving it a nice feel to it so far. And then I'm going to also go down to Birth of Venus. And I'm going to go ahead and reduce my opacity on this as well. And that right there is about good. You can see what that's doing. It's adding a little bit more of a matting feel. And again, I'm going to go ahead and mouse this off my subject. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down into my painterly textures, and I am going to go into my heavy texture. So it's the third section down when you get into your painterly textures, and I'm going to go ahead and run Kalo. So see how that just like brought everything together, and it's making it super nice and creamy in the background and really pretty. I'm going to go ahead and reduce my opacity just a little bit. I'm going to click in my layer mask, and for this I want to go ahead and mask this off of my subject. So I'm just going to go ahead and start masking this off of her. And then I'm also going to go ahead and reduce my opacity due to about 50%. And I'm going to just mask it off a few of these apples to let the light come in a little bit more. And maybe just a few leaves. Okay, so you can see there, if I click on and off, that really made a big dramatic difference. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down into my finishing brushes, and I'm going to go ahead and go into Tack Sharp Details. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this up to 100%, and I'm going to go ahead and paint that onto my subject and the apple that she's holding. And then we are going to go down into our finishing touches, and I'm going to go into Discover the Details. And this I'm going to go ahead and invert, Command I, because I just want to go ahead and paint this onto my subject. Take it off a little bit there because I liked her glowing skin there. Maybe a little bit off of her forehead. Okay, that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and reduce my opacity. Okay, and then I'm going to go also into my vignettes, and I'm going to select Brunette Vignette. You can see what that does. And then I'm going to go ahead and click into my layer mask. I'm going to go ahead and mask this off of my subject at 100%. So I don't want any falling on her. And then I'm going to go ahead and reduce this a little bit. And I'm also going to go ahead and go into my Pick a Color vignette. So I'm going to go play this, and it's going to ask me to select a color. I'm going to select one of the deeper reds of the apple. I'm going to hit OK. And then you can see what that's doing. So it's adding a little bit of the color that we already have going on into the image, which I love. So I'm going to go ahead and just take that down a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and mask this off of my subject. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and flatten this. And the next thing we're going to do is go down into our finishing tones. And I am going to go ahead and select Romanticism. And I like how that's overall warming up my image. I'm just going to go ahead and take that down. And maybe just a little bit more. That looks good there. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and flatten this. And the next thing I want to do is I want to bring out a little bit more of the apples, the color in the apples. So I am going to go into my Glowing Vibrance brush, That's under your finishing brushes. And I'm going to go ahead and change my opacity to 50%. And I'm just going to start painting on a few of the red parts of these apples very sporadically. That's just going to give them a little bit more color. Bring that up a bit so you can see. Let me go in here just a little bit more. Okay. And then finally, we're going to go down into our Dodge and Burn. So I'm going to go ahead and use the Painterly Burn brush first. I like to burn before I dodge for some reason, so do it in whatever order that you'd like. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep my midtones up a little bit just so you can see a little bit more here. But I really want to go ahead and define her chin. So I'm just going to go ahead and like start at her ear where her chin line is and really like draw that line out. And then just go into some of these shadows here. And see how I'm like defining her expression that she's already making. Go over her lashes, her brows. And then we're going to go into here, into her creases. Might add a little bit more shadowing up on her shoulder and define her neck just a little bit more. And really anywhere where there's a shadow or where you would like to create a shadow, because we want to just define, especially the face. But you can also use this on the clothing. Not much of her clothing is showing up on this image. And I can also use this in the shadows of her hair, so we can really accentuate her messy bun here. So I'm just going to go into some of these shadows, and then I'm also going to go ahead and go into the highlights in a moment. So you can see there what that did. And then if I think that that's just a little bit too much, I can easily just take that opacity down. You can also add a layer mask to this. So if I say, like, for instance, like right here, maybe I went a little bit too far just because I'm trying to show you how to do this. But I'm going to go ahead and I could just easily go through here and get a brush and take a little bit of that off. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is go into my Painterly Dodge tool. And I'm going to go ahead and start defining her highlights in her hair. If you guys have been following me for a while, you know I've been doing this since like day one. Is I always like bring out the highlights in the hair, which I love. Okay, so you can see what a big difference that makes. So it just accentuates everything. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my exposure down, and I'm going to go ahead and go just over some of the highlights that she's got going on right now. Maybe add just a little bit to her chin. That was a little bit too much. I'm going to step back. I'm still on a pretty high percentage here. I like to do it heavier on the highlights of the hair and then take it down for the rest of the skin. So I'm just going to go ahead and take that down to 4. And I'm going to accentuate her highlights that she has on her arms here and add a little bit onto this arm. So you can see that just kind of makes it pop. And then I can also go on to the highlights of the apples. And I would be very detailed. I'm trying to keep this a little bit short, but I would also go on to some of the leaves, anywhere where there's a highlight, and really get those to shine. and just keep going over those until I'm satisfied with the ending result. So anywhere where there's a highlight in the image and anywhere where there's a shadow is to where you would use your dodge and burn technique. I'm going to go ahead and flatten this, and then I'm going to go into my Auto Dodge Highlight Pop, which is one of my favorites. And I'm going to take that down. Let me blow that up so you can see what that's doing. But that just gives a little bit of added dodge and burn. And I'll flatten this, and let me take a snapshot of this, and I'll show you the before and after. So here is where we started. That's before, and that's after. Before and after. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, you can visit greaterthangatsby.com and click on the Painterly 2 collection. Thanks, guys, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.